Filmmaker Gary J. Tunnicliffe weighs in on the Cleopatra casting controversy. Disney's Soul is no longer in theaters, and Coming to America Part 2 shifts to Amazon today on Midnight's Edge in the morning.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is, where you is. I am Tom Connors. With me is the boss man, Andre. How you doing?
Greetings. I'm good, thank you. And yourself?
Oh, hanging in there, doing the best I can. And with us is a very special guest, as always, Mr. Gary J. Tunnicliffe. How you doing?
Wakey, wakey, eggs and bakey. I'm good, Tom. How are you? We're all good. We're all fine, right? Hey, we've been all that. How are you? You know, the Havord and Gomadize and the I'm well and what's the food and good morning.
It's Friday. What else can we say?
Friday. Look at that. Friday. Heading into the weekend. We can all go to the cinema tonight and watch it. Oh, no, we can't.
Yeah, no. Not this week.
Well, I could have wanted to, but...
Yeah, I probably could too, or actually I definitely could, but I'm not going to because there's nothing on, which we'll get to in due time. So yeah, but we're not the only ones here. So greetings and good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are, everyone in the chat. So nice to see you all here. Silver Nova says hello to everyone from Australia. Well, hello, Australia. Coffee Lover 239 says it's currently 11:04 a.m. here in Houston. So greetings, Texas. So we have quite the collection here with us. We have Sanded Hammerstag I saw here with us, and Byron Dunbar says Gary. So you're obviously missed Gary. Plus Byron Dunbar, there he is. So, yeah. And Gumbaroo also says Gary. So everyone is excited to have
two Garys, not three Garys. Hey, Gumbaroo. That sounds like an Australian name, doesn't it? Ah, bloody hell, mate. I just had a great Gumbaroo in the old at the back.
Absolutely. All right. Okay, but we have quite a few things to talk about today. And what's the biggest thing that's been happening in the world of movies this week? And then I mean the entire surrounding world of movies. There was certainly one thing that blew up on Twitter. Anyone
well, that would be Gal Gadot playing, or Gadot, however you want to pronounce it.
I think it's Gadot.
I don't know. I've been told so many different times. I don't Gadot care. Whatever. I don't.
Oh wow.
But no, like seriously though. Again, like here we go with another, Twitter outrage fest because, somebody thinks they're smarter than they really are, and then 10 other people get behind them, and then, they got to double down on the over and over and over again. But you did a video about this, Andre, so you could probably take the lead on this better than I could.
Yes, very, very quickly a recap. I did an editorial yesterday. If you haven't seen that yet, then feel free to do so. It's right there on the channel. But basically, Gal Gadot was announced, or not announced per se, but it certainly was revealed on Monday that Gal Gadot will be playing Cleopatra in a new movie from Patty Jenkins. Now, this you would think would be cause for celebration because it's female-centric across the board. It's a very well-known historic figure. Doesn't necessarily have the best box office history of all movies and franchises, but still, a lot of good can be done with it. And on the face of it, Gal Gadot is the one of, if not the best cast Cleopatras of all time. But the thing with Twitter is that it allows people to express opinions that they're not qualified to have. Instead, it's a place where you can make snap judgments, and these judgments aren't necessarily based in fact, but rather misconception. And many seem to be of the misconception that Gal Gadot is somehow too white to be portraying the very Greek Cleopatra. And others suffer the misconception that Cleopatra was either African American, which is hilarious, or Arab, which is ridiculous. But yeah, so great opportunity to sound off and show how offended one is. I already gave my take on it. Tom, want to give your take real quick before we give the word to Gary? Because I know you must have something to say about this.
Oh,
Word.
well,
One word. I only get one word. Trust me, I'll have a few words.
I'm sure you'll have a few. Yeah. I mean, I've said a lot of my piece too, as well, on After Dark and a few other places. But yeah, I mean, it's this typical nonsense where everybody decides to lose their mind in an uneducated manner, make themselves look like a bunch of ignorant fools, double down on the stupid, and retreat and return. And, you know, like my favorite one of the bunch was one we used in the video where it was like, you know, bro, I'm going to play the race card here. She should be played by an African American. It's like, Cleopatra was American? Yeah, she's from Maryland, I believe. You know, it's like, that's how uneducated these idiots can be. You know, and not only that, it's like, we don't even really know for sure. But honestly, at this point, who cares if a Cleopatra movie has about as much historical accuracy as a Jurassic Park film? Because it really doesn't matter, because probably about as much as you're going to get right, you're going to get just as much wrong. So what difference does it make in the end? But Gary, yeah, we're definitely anxious to hear your take on this.
Yeah, so I mean, I reached out to Andre because I'd seen that he'd done a report on it, and I was kind of straining at the leash. I think, like most people, yelling at their, at their computer screen, kind of going, "What on earth are people moaning about?" I mean, first of all, on paper, this is she's a brilliant choice for a cast of Cleopatra, because. Even if you kind of go into the lineage of the history of where exactly the Cleopatras came from, and let's talk about it. We're not talking about one Cleopatra. We're talking about actually, I think she's Cleopatra 7.
Yes, she's the seventh of her name.
See, and we can't call the movie Cleopatra 7, obviously, because I remember years ago, Miramax, they released a film called The Madness of King George, which in Europe was called The Madness of King George III. But when they asked Americans, polling earlier on, they said, would you go and see a film called The Madness of King George III? A lot of Americans turned around and said, well, no, I never saw the first two.
I'm still trying to find Henry. I'm still trying to find Henry 1 through 4.
Exactly.
At this point,
very hard to find. So Cleopatra 7 would completely confuse everybody, and I understand. But I mean, even on paper, I mean, first of all, you could say that there's definitely some kind of like Eastern Mediterranean, influence in the Greek and Egyptian heritage or lineage of the Cleopatras anyway. But if you wanted to get completely accurate to the degree, you'd have to find someone who was having sex with their brothers, sisters, and cousins, because I mean, it was a massively incestuous line anyway. Right. So Gadot, who's, Israeli, born, I believe. I mean, he's kind of, from that part of the world anyway. Secondly, as a director of a film, you should have the choice to pick who you think is a really good candidate, and also who has got some box office clout and who is currently interesting for people to watch, Patty Jenkins has a relationship with Gadot. So as a director, it's like, oh, you've already got a shorthand dialogue. You can get on with them really, really easily. You know how they work. They know how you work. Jenkins has clearly shown that she's a director who can handle it. I'm not a huge fan of Wonder Woman. I think it's, but again, I understand as well that in those situations, you're making a movie by committee probably a lot of the time. But Monster's clearly very, very well made. And the only thing really, I suppose, if they really wanted to kind of like super duper, maybe turn the tide on this a little bit, you've got to think that Gadot's probably a little bit maybe old. She's 35 years old, and Cleopatra died when she was like 38, I think, So there was stuff going on. Cleopatra took the throne when she was 18 or 19 years old. So maybe you cast another actress to play young Cleopatra, and you try and reach out for a half Greek, half Egyptian actress who's brilliant looking. I mean, if you were to follow the Twitter rights and say, okay, so we're going to do it politically 100% correct, you would have to have a casting call for a, 25 to 30-year-old, half Egyptian, half Greek actress who can carry the weight of a $200 million blockbuster. You know?
Are they going to have 23andMe waiting on the set to make sure that she's that much Greek and that much
But
everything?
it's like ridiculous. I mean, as a studio,
I know.
you wouldn't risk that anyway. It would be a terrible risk as a studio. You know, I mean, it'd be crazy.
And you couldn't even do it because like the ancient Egyptians don't exist anymore. Like,
I know, I was being facetious.
The exact lineage that they had, that's extinct. The closest thing you're going to get to it is like the Coptic minority in Egypt today, but even that's like watered out.
So you look at that part of it and you go, so Gadot fits that. And then it's later Kalogridis writing it, who's Greek. So you've got a Greek writer. You've got a Greek female writer writing it. You've got a Israeli, Mediterranean actress acting in it, and a female director. It's like, Jesus Christ, guys. It's like, I mean, it really is kind of like hitting all the notes here, right? I mean, the only thing they have to do next is for the roles of Mark Antony and Caesar, make sure that you cast someone who's got some Italian blood in it. So it's like, okay, we get Bradley Cooper to play Julius Caesar. He's about the same age that Julius Caesar was when he was shagging Cleopatra. I mean, I think she was 20 years old and Julius Caesar was like 45, 46 years old when she had his child. Honestly, the big stick in the mud for me regarding the film, to make it interesting for me, is going to be the writing. And I'm not a fan of most of the stuff that later Kalogridis has written. It's been a bit choppy. I mean, I fucking hate Alexander. And I'm a huge fan of Alexander the Great. And I'd like to tip my hat here to the teacher who kind of like got me to read about Alexander the Great, and who got me to read Dune, and who got me to read things like Coleridge's The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. And it's not a teacher, it's Steve Harris from Iron Maiden, who his songs inspired me to go and learn those things. And, I'd like to say it was the benefits of a classical education, as Alan Rippon would say in Die Hard about Alexander the Great. But no, it was Steve Harris of Iron Maiden who taught me to look and read Frank Herbert's Dune and read The Rime of the Ancient Mariner and The Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner and things like that. So, yeah. So, I mean, someone just said, Idris Elba for Mark Antony, Idris is English.
It's a joke. It's a joke. We have every time something comes up about recasting, it's like, Idris Elba, where do I vote?
Everyone wants Idris Elba for everything.
The great thing there is that we can get a couple of Italian actors in there, and there's a couple of great, Italian actors, half Italian actors, or you could go full Italian, or even, Leonardo DiCaprio, as to play in the movie. So it'll be interesting to see who they cast as Caesar and as Mark Antony. And then for me, it's really going to be a case. I'm going to be interested to see what parts of the story they kind of focus on to make it interesting, because on paper it's really kind of a gushy bit of a love story, even though really when you get down to it, Cleopatra was a bit of a manipulative kind of, she knew
more than just a little bit. But
she knew how to use men. She rented out her womb to give babies so that she could basically safeguard. Maybe Cardi B should play it. She was very smart in kind of manipulating guys. So I mean, it's like as a writer, do you start with the War of the Pelusium and then finish with the Battle of Actium, and have two big battles at the end of it to kind of get all the men interested in it. And whilst in the middle you do, the 20 years in the middle where she was basically shagging one Caesar to the other or whoever was in charge and killing off various people before it ends with the joyous double suicide. Oh, sorry, spoiler alert. Spoiler alert, everybody. Get ready for everyone to die at the end. So your female lead and your male lead both die. So it's interesting. I mean, I do, going back as well, I'd like to say something, Andre, everyone always regards the 63 or 53?
63.
63 as kind of a massive flop, it was a huge flop. I mean, wouldn't it be funny if, really, the truth is that's an interesting story. The making of Cleopatra is an interesting story. Maybe Patty Jenkins and later Kalogridis, they're actually not making a, Sword and Sandals but epic. Maybe they're actually doing the making of Cleopatra.
That would be actually more interesting, to be honest.
I watched the hell out of making of Cleopatra movie.
and maybe Gal Gadot is actually playing Elizabeth Taylor. You know, I mean,
that would be more. I would love that, because actually, I love movies like Hitchcock and stuff where they, are behind the scenes making. I'm like, we need more of these. We need the making of Jaws, Star Wars,
and it is. I mean, Cleopatra is a legendary story. You've got
exactly.
They hire a director. They build all these fantastic sets. They shoot half the movie. She gets really, really sick. They have to scrap that movie. It's almost like Exorcist again. The beginning where you have to bring in another director. He doesn't want to do this. They don't want to do that. They scrap everything. So by the end of it, it ballooned from, 2 million to 7 million to apparently 44 million.
Or something like, yeah, probably with advertising and all that, probably in the 40s.
44. Yeah. I mean, but they didn't need to advertise it. It was the film that everybody had to see that year. It was the biggest movie of the year by far. So it was made eventually, I think, for, if you translate to today's cost, about $370 million.
Yeah, I was like, something like that.
But with just the US and the worldwide release, it made, I've got it written here, $829 million. So it wasn't a flop, I mean, it did, and it got 9 Oscar nominations and 4 wins, including one for.
I don't know if it so much was a flop as it was just the downfall of the studio system. It
wasn't the downfall of the studio system at all. Again, that's a kind of a mistrope of it. It was I think everyone kind of accredits it to the downfall of the big epic, because I'm sure basically everyone went, you know what, let's not do that again. I'm sure it was really the big downfall of never let's put that much power into the hands of an actor or an actress, because she jokingly basically said, I'd only do this film if they gave me $1 million, and Fox went, okay, here's $1 million, and it was like, oh, okay, now I guess I have to do it. So was the sickness she got, illness, was it really to do with her genuinely being ill, or was she just generally pissed off by having to do it? But she was really, really sick for a while, so they had to move the entire production. All these beautiful sets were torn down, and they ended up moving everything to Italy. So I mean, it's legendary how that film to me is legendary in its making, but it's never the flop that everyone kind of thinks it was. Like Waterworld, everyone assumes Waterworld was a massive flop, but actually did quite well when it came out. And then, of course, everyone turned to the whitewashing situation. They say, oh, well, look what they did before with Alexander. They whitewashed it and it was a flop, and Gods of Egypt was a flop. No, Alexander was a flop because it was shit. Gods of Egypt was flop because it was shit. Gladiator had a fucking Australian in the lead role, for Christ's sake, and it was a massive success. Why? Because it was a good film, 300, not a film I'm crazy about. Had a Scotsman playing a Spartan, for God's sake, but it did really, really well. It's like, it's nothing to do with the casting, but people turning their back on the movies. That's not why people didn't go to see Gods of Egypt. It wasn't very good. You only watched 10 minutes of it to realize that. So if Cleopatra's really, really great and well made and fantastic, people will go, they will watch it, they will enjoy it, and it will do well. But I really think that kudos to Hollywood. They've actually done a pretty damn good job, it's a female director and a Greek writer and a Mediterranean actress. So cast a couple of half Italian or Italian actors in the roles, and then you can fill up all of the other roles with the minorities and the whatever you need to do to satisfy the ridiculous Oscar needs, and you'll be fine. I mean, God, they can even do the LGBTQ too, because the eunuchs and God knows what. You can have every kind of person filled out in that cast to satisfy the Oscar board. So it makes it's to me it's like I say, will I be interested in it? I'm not a great fan of the kind of like, the romance and the subterfuge of it. But if it's got a couple of good battle sequences in it, which it feels like they could do as well, it could on paper be a great movie. You have a big battle at the beginning, maybe a big battle at the end. It's like, you could have a little Lord of the Rings on your hands. So.
But you don't have to, because here's the thing. You could also have a small-scale political drama dealing with the intrigues that Cleopatra had to go through, one, to gain power, and two, to keep it. And just like the political machinations with the power struggle with the rest of her family, and just how much she needed those alliances with the first Caesar and then Mark Antony, and finally how she failed to seduce Augustus, and that was kind of the end of her line. So there's actually a million different ways you can go there. It doesn't have to be like this epic thing. So I'm like really interested to see exactly which take they're going to do, because especially now, when we don't know that this thing is going to go into theaters, as we'll get into for our later subjects. Like, this is something that I wouldn't be surprised if they do a smaller scale version of it and put it straight on. I was about to say HBO Max, so it's but that won't happen because it's Paramount.
It could be one of those mid-level Paramount movies, maybe.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It could be one of those mid-level Paramount movies, because they're gonna like make a crap ton of them, like 50 movies or something.
52.
For there you go, like the new 52 for Paramount Plus. This could be like one of them.
To me, it smells. I mean, if you were, if the cast was if it wasn't Gal Gadot, maybe I think with the kind of casting there and the kind of director you're talking about and the writer, it's, if you told me Aaron Sorkin was writing it, I'd be going, well, clearly that's where it's going to be. It's going to be this twisty turny tale of subterfuge, Machiavellian, intrigue and manipulations. But I think with Lita's background, I would suspect it's going to be more along the lines of a blockbuster type movie. It feels like they could pin their hat to it. And like I say, I think if they cast a couple of the right male leads in it, then it could really, really be that. So I think as long as they cap it at a certain amount and are smart about where they shoot it and how they shoot it, then again, what would be great is if it was great battle sequences and great subterfuge, which really is what Gladiator is. Gladiator mixed it up perfectly there. It was, you'd got the stuff for the guys and you got the stuff for the girls. A bit of a love story in there and some, dealing with the bad guy really in the form of, Joaquin Phoenix's character and the love story, but also some great big battle sequences. So I think if I was going to suggest as a studio member the blueprint for it, I would be saying, guys, let's look at Gladiator and follow the format of something like that, in that we'll bookend it with some exciting battle stuff and go from there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see exactly which way they do. But we have some super chats to get to in the meantime before we move on to the next topic. So just give me 1 second. I'm just going to refresh to make sure that I get every single one. But yeah, as for Cleopatra, I'm actually looking forward to the movie. So it will be very interesting to see which way they go.
I'm not looking forward to it yet. Again, I'll be interested to see. I mean, here's the thing, and again,
I'm potentially looking forward to it, pending and knowing more about which direction to take.
The only thing I've got to say about looking forward to movies now is, it's nice to see that everyone's getting excited at these images that are coming on TV, online from Batman, and these set photos and these people in Liverpool getting bits of glimpses. But what happened? What happened, people? What happened? People are now sitting at images from Batman with magnifying glasses going, oh, look, she's got pink nails, which means it's a throwback to the story of so-and-so. So clearly they're going to do this. And his tie is red, so it must be this. It's like, is there going to be no stone left unturned anymore? Do we have to know absolutely everything or have figured it out by the time we get there? If I said to you, Andre, I'm going to give you a present at Christmas, I've got a really nice gift for you, I'm going to give you on Christmas Day, and then every day for the next 3 months I said, oh, here's a little picture of it, part of it, I'm going to send you a little picture of part of it, and I'm going to give you a couple of hints about what it is every week. By the time you got to Christmas and opened it, you'd be like, yeah, well, I kind of knew what this was anyway. There's going to be no surprises, no excitement, no, oh, wow, that was really, really cool. Everything's going to be dissected and analyzed to the ridiculous degree that there's just no surprises anymore on a blockbuster movie. We see trailers that give us too much information, and we just have people just like I say, going over images with every detail and then creaming themselves going, oh, look, it's exactly what I was hoped it would be. It's like, it's a still image, for Christ's sake. How can you have any idea what the movie's going to be like based on a photograph from a set? It's like, Jesus, it's like, it just makes me wonder. I mean, I understand that people have to make a living at the moment and people who rely on this to get people to watch and everything else, but I just feel like I like I say, to me, it's just a bit sad that every detail is torn apart and analyzed and compared to, is it this, it's going to be that, you know. So by the time you get there, you're like, yeah, well, I've seen everything about it, every part of it.
That's always the risk for those of us that follow movies and stuff. But yeah, we got some of the super chat. So we got one right now from Pablo Papano, who sent us $2 saying, Gary, will Steve Norrington come back to film?
I hope so. I think he should, you know. It's so hard for me to comment. Stephen's a genius. What you really need to make a film with Stephen Norrington is you need 80 Stephen Norringtons in the crew. You know, that's really the best way for Steve to make a film. I think he's tinkering at doing some stuff. He might have done like a little short recently or something. I haven't spoken to Steve for a little while. Obviously, I don't think what happened with LXG, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, did his career any favors. I think, unfortunately, when you go head to head with a Hollywood legend like Sean Connery, and Sean Connery comes out basically very verbally, you know, maligning you. I think Hollywood, basically, that's what you're regarded as. So whether Steve is known for making the brilliant Blade and for turning that property round, he'll always be the guy that went toe-to-toe with Connery. And when I did my little talk about Batman the other day, I actually was talking about Connery, and I know I mentioned Blade, but I really meant to say League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. It was during that movie that Steve said every day there would be a talk for 2 hours with Connery and his people, and they were like, why are you doing this and why are you doing that? And Steve got very, very frustrated because he just wanted to shoot the movie and felt that Connery was fighting against him. And I've heard why Connery got upset, and I've heard why Steve got upset. And Steve actually is very, very understanding of Connery, even though he was frustrated by Connery. He's like, I get it. He's James Bond, you know, and he's a legend, so he didn't want to be told what to do by some young upstart director. He said, but the problem I had, he said, is that Connery would say, hey, whatever you want to do, you're the director. And he said, and then he would fight me all the time. He said, so he would say, you're the director, go ahead. He said, and then the next day he'd be fighting me and why are we doing this and why are we doing that? To the point when eventually Steve lost his temper and said, you said you'd do what I do, so do what I fucking want you to do. And I don't think Connery enjoyed that. So there was it got worse and worse and worse. And I think eventually the studio tended to side with Connery. This is why I've said before, it's you know, Steve was a well-tested director by that point, but, you know, heaven forbid that you're a young director who gets hired to work on a big blockbuster with a major Hollywood actor, because you really, you know, you're castrating yourself before you get there, because there's no way the studio are going to side with you against the actor, because they've only got one A-list guy. You've only got one Sylvester Stallone, one Arnold Schwarzenegger, one Tom Cruise, one so-and-so, but there are hundreds of directors lining up for the job. So it's a real balancing act. But Pablo, I really hope Steve does. I think he will eventually. And he's mellowed in time. You know, Steve's a crazy person. I mean, I'm pretty manic and pretty insane. I mean, and people say that when Steve and I are together and talking, they're like, it's the worst thing in the world to be around, because you literally have two people talking not to each other, they're just talking at each other, like, you know,
like machine guns firing.
It's like a verbal fight. And anyone knows Steve. Steve's like, yeah, well, whatever, mate. Yeah, he never sits still for 5 minutes. He's like, yeah, well, yeah. And Steve, I would say that if I was a producer with $50 million, I would hire Steve Norrington to direct a movie, because I know that he would do something that would be out of the box, brilliant, and probably trend setting. But you'd need to hire a line producer with an iron fist to keep him in line, which would cause problems. And you'd need a crew who can really keep up with him. Because Steve has one very simple, seems to me, as having worked with him, one very simple demand. His attitude is always like, okay, we're about to run a marathon. I need you to keep up with me. If you're going to flag behind, then I'm going to get upset. I need you to keep up. So, you know, don't flag behind. So when he did Blade, he was very clever at hiring a lot of Jim Cameron's ex-crew. He would say, this guy worked for Cameron, this guy worked for Cameron, this guy worked for Cameron. Because I think he was like, if they could deal with Jim, then they can deal with me. And he was nicknamed Mini Jim at times by the crew. They called him Mini Jim. And does Steve direct like I direct? No, he tends to be quite bombastic and very opinionated. But he's a very smart guy, and I mean, and he's clearly, he does things that I could never do, and has an imagination that I could never do. One of the most talented people I've ever met. I mean, he's one of those guys like David Fincher that could probably do every job on the set himself and do it better than the people who are doing it. So really feels compromised that he has to actually hire people. The only job he can't do or wouldn't try to do is acting, and he finds it very frustrating. I know he finds it hard because he's basically looking at everything thinking, I could do that better. I mean, production designing a Stephen Norrington film, I'd happily production design a Stephen Norrington film because he'll design everything. He'll draw it. He'll give you the picture. You can turn around and go, yeah, I production designed Blade, but it's like Kurt Petruccelli didn't really do it. Stephen Norrington did it.
So basically, the ones who got the credit weren't the ones doing it. A Stephen Norrington movie really is a Stephen Norrington movie, quite literally.
It is, from what but Stephen Norrington, and look, I hired Steve after Blade. He sculpted the lead creature on Feast for me, the head of it, and he would come into my studio and I'd give him little jobs, and he was just I love coming here. I'd give him little jobs. The thing with Steve was you never had to overtask him, give him one little project to do, and he'd run with it. Somebody just mentioned, what Steve doing for money. You have to realize that Steve doesn't spend any money on anything at all. He wears clothes that he looks like a tramp. He eats, he's a vegetarian who eats very little food. He doesn't buy books. He doesn't buy DVDs. He doesn't buy flashy cars. He's the guy with just doesn't give a damn about anything. He's quite happy to, he doesn't go to the gym. He doesn't go to parties. He's just not that guy. His outgoings are tiny. So he could live on the money he made from Blade and from LXG for a long time.
Awesome. We have some more super chats. Then we have a question from the comments that I'd like to get to before we get back to the main program. The first super chat of the day was actually from Willie Woodward, who sent us $5 saying, glad to finally catch the morning show and glad to see Mr. Tunnicliffe in person. He blew my mind when I saw the replay. Much respect.
Oh, thank you.
And Pablo Papano said, Idris Elba for Mark Anthony, as we
we covered that one. Yeah,
we covered that one.
Well, thank you, Pablo.
Yeah, and according to Christy, sent us a poop sticker. So thanks for that.
It's a pooper sticker.
Yeah, there you go. And then we had a couple of comments about Cleopatra, and sent us $4.99 saying, this may be the most important role Gadot will portray so far in her career. I think she could make it a success. Which other actors were considered? Honestly, you know what? I think, the ones that we know were considered for earlier iterations of the movie was Angelina Jolie, because this was being set up by Amy Pascal for Angelina Jolie. This was mentioned in the leaked Sony emails, where one of the producers basically had to tell Pascal that we can't do this. This is going to be Elizabeth Taylor's Cleopatra all over again. So that never happened. And then Lady Gaga was attached for a while. But I think that for this particular iteration, the one overseen by Patty Jenkins, I would imagine no one other than Gal Gadot was ever in consideration for it, would be my imagination.
I think basically I would say, Angelina, you're too old now. I'm afraid, sweetie. You're 45 years old and, you're 10 years. She was dead for 10 years by that time. There was a time when Angelina probably would have been good, but also Angelina had a shot at, the Standal Epic with Alexander. I think if you were going to be a gossip monger, or you were going to kind of try to create a bit of sensationalism, I would have probably been the guy at Paramount who would have been like, why don't we cast Lady Gaga and cast Bradley Cooper as Mark Antony? People clearly liked them as a couple in Star is Born, thought they had a good chemistry. Let's reignite it and bring them back for what's it called? But
if you think people lost their mind over Gal Gadot playing, if you announced Lady Gaga, you'd have, oh man, that would be Twitter would probably blow up. Literally,
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that they blew up more for
No.
the Gadot. She's Israeli and former Israeli soldier.
But all women in Israel are former Israeli soldiers. You have to be in the military in there. It's like, I love that, former Israeli soldiers. Like, yeah, any woman who's born in Israel has to.
Yeah, but Lady Gaga is like whiter than white can be. There's no fucking way they're gonna allow. And not only that, you have people that just wouldn't want her in it. Period.
Hold on, but isn't she half Italian?
Maybe, but
she is okay. You know what? She's a fake blonde, and she's not that white at all. I mean,
here's the interesting thing,
color of her hair, and yeah.
Here's the reason. Actually, Gaga is actually quite an interesting casting choice, and I would say this. First of all, there's no doubting she's got some chops as an actress. You know, I think anyone who saw Star is Born was like, she's actually pretty good. Secondly, if you want to go down the truly historical route of Cleopatra, you know, Cleopatra was quite short and wasn't exactly known for being the most stunningly beautiful woman in the world, which I thought was a brilliant thing that Gaga did in Star is Born, where she kind of actually made jokes about her nose and stuff like this. So, you know, really the rumor about Cleopatra was that she had this, you know, wonderful voice and was very charming, you know, almost like the Elizabeth Holmes of Theranos of her day, you know, that she managed to kind of like talk people into things and stuff. So, again, what you have to ask yourself is, the people who are going to bitch and complain and blah, 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 are they really moviegoers anyway? They're not going to go no matter what. So, or is it about packaging and what you can put in a movie? And like I say, I personally think probably the Gaga thing and getting Bradley Cooper is probably a bit too... you know, you're sucking the 21st century, 22nd century into an old movie, but which is what they did with, you know, Richard Burton.
Well,
and Cliff.
So far the Chad has pretty much reacted the way I figured. Like I said, you get more of a harsh reaction if she was, simply because there's people who just don't like her.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's uninformed opinion, I think. I agree with Gary. She'd be an inspired choice.
Yeah, I think so. But I also think there are people, you know, you've got to wonder sometimes if the PR departments and studios aren't looking at all this stuff going on, going, yep, great, fantastic. This is what we want. You know, people are talking about it.
I can see that there's a cultural difference here, because in America, she's not as beloved. She's seen more of a joke. Lady Gaga.
I don't think she's considered a joke at all. Are you kidding?
Yeah, no, I'm not kidding. It fucking all. Like I said, look at the chat. They were saying the same damn thing.
Dude, I'm a 30-year veteran of Los Angeles. I'm an American citizen, you know. I mean, and I think she was one of those pop stars who kind of like did all of the ridiculous stuff in the beginning of her career, but is a legitimate songwriter and I think definitely Star is Born legitimized her as an actress. I you know, again, I was not interested in seeing Star is Born at all. I was dragged along by my wife, and we sat there and went, oh no, she can act. She can act. And I think Bradley Cooper's clearly gone out of his way to say, no, she's the real deal. And she can sing, obviously. So, I mean, it's not like, I was thinking about this the other day. I was thinking about Gran Torino, you know. So there's a film where, you know, you had humong actors hired alongside Clint Eastwood. Now, clearly they're not carrying the movie. You need someone who can act the part and can carry the movie. But the humong actors, you know, B and people like that, it's great that they were humong, but they weren't fantastic actors. I mean, you can watch that film now and go, they're a bit squeaky as actors, you know. So I do think that, you know, Gaga actually can act. I mean, it's always ridiculous you have to actually call her by fucking the name Lady Gaga. I mean, you know, I'd rather call her by a real name, you know, whatever Italian name that is, I'm pretty sure. But I would say that she's definitely got some chops as an actress, and clearly she's got some. It's not like hiring Katy Perry or Miley Cyrus to play the role, although they may be brilliant actors. I don't know. But I definitely think she dispelled some of those myths when she did, you know, Star is Born. I sat there as the director going, you know, as a person watching it, saying, yeah, she was okay. She didn't pull it down, and you know, felt she did a pretty good job. So again, it would be interesting, Cassie, because she's not traditionally super duper beautiful, which according to history neither was Cleopatra, which Gal Gadot clearly is. Clearly Gal Gadot's a stunner, and the only misstep Gal Gadot's ever made, as far as I've seen in terms of role, was I'd never want to see her sing Imagine again in that ridiculous patronizing tone of trying to sort of get us to all love each other, you know. That's
You're losing the audience on that one, Gary. I'm sorry.
You know,
like I said, in America, she's not seen as this big great thing. She's seen as she's seen as a Madonna, Cyndi Lauper wannabe. Like that's all we kind of see her as.
Cyndi Lauper, I wish she had the numbers that Lady Gaga has ever had, But I wouldn't put Cyndi Lauper in there. Maybe Madonna, but not Cyndi Lauper. Yeah. But yes, okay. But we it's good that we differ in our opinions. But if I was directing and they said it's between Lady Gaga and Gal Gadot, either of those two, I'd be like, well, they're both. I defer to you guys in the studio. Who's going to get more bums on seats? And let's do a test with them both and see how they are.
I will say I think that Lady Gaga could have been a brilliant choice because you have like this image of her with her hair dyed and everything like that, but naturally her hair is like dark brown to even black. And if you put her on the ground in Syria, you wouldn't bat twice at her, I think, if she gets a tan and everything. And she also has like that look that's kind of Mediterranean-ish.
Yeah.
She has the nose. She'd actually be, and she does have the acting chops. I think that Stephanie something is her real name, and if she were to use her real name or something, I think that that would have been a very interesting choice for Cleopatra.
Yeah,
and if you could reunite her with as you said, Bradley Cooper as Caesar.
Again, I'm not suggesting it. I'm just saying that there are people in it. I could imagine sitting at a board table in Paramount and someone going, "Hey, how about we get Bradley Cooper back as Mark Antony and we get that thing going?" And people going, "Oh man, poster and they're going to rekindle that relationship." Because again, they did a very clever thing in Hollywood where it's like, well, are they acting or is something else going on here? And maybe that got people to see it because there was definitely a chemistry there. And when they did the Oscar performance together, there was they're very good at doing the kind of Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks thing, staring into each other's eyes, and you're like, what am I looking at here? Is there some kind of thing going on that I didn't know about? But,
I was thinking that I bet that the wife of Bradley Cooper must be really jealous or something because that looked real.
But again, you never know. She's, hey, honey, I'm going out tonight. We're going to do this thing with Stephanie, Lady Gaga. I'm going to stare at her lovingly all night and, just to get the numbers up. Again, I think it's like I say, I always used to look at Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks on stage in Fleetwood Mac and think that, like, wow, look at that. It was good cinemas. Never forget they're two actors, you know what I mean? So, again, like I say, I've got no skin in the game and don't really give a monkeys and whoever they cast, I'll see the movie and whatever, but Gal Gadot definitely on paper is the more classically beauty, tall, wonderful. And again, if it was more of a Joan of, kind of like Cleopatra in there with a sword fighting in a battle, you could definitely see why Gal Gadot would be the lead. But again, for a manipulative kind of like, Machiavellian kind of woman, I have no problem with either of those. But like I say, I'm just thinking in terms of packaging in that it'll be interesting to see who they cast as the two males, which is going to be Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. Who will they cast there? If they cast something ridiculous there, I don't know, what would be a ridiculous choice for those,
Well,
Chris Pine.
Sorry?
Chris Pine.
Yeah, that would be awful. I mean, that would be just terrible, right? Like Chris Pine as a Roman lead. That'd be awful.
Well, before we get back to the super chats, David S. Really wants to know if we'll ever get an X-rated Hellraiser. Well, NC-17 would be the rate. They haven't had an X rating now in like 30 years.
I think the last one we did was unrated.
I was just going to say, there's a few of them that are unrated, aren't there? Besides
yours? It's weird now. That whole kind of like NC-17 rating thing kind of went out the window with a lot of DVD because it was always
pretty much
the unrated version. I think that whole. The reason a lot of that came about was kind of the whole, if you couldn't advertise a movie that was considered NC-17 or above because they wouldn't show pictures of it, so you had to call the theaters to find out what movie it was playing.
Newspapers wouldn't advertise them, and you also had...
It was basically porn, right? You know what I mean? So
not really, but it was still that taboo, and you had certain theaters wouldn't even carry the movies, I remember Showgirls had a lot of issues with that, Bad Lieutenant... They tried it because it was, like Fritz the Cat, like Gambaro, there was a lot of movies that got the quote unquote X rating, but they felt like people were going to confuse that with the triple X rating, which is attributed to hardcore porn. Yeah. So they changed it to NC-17 in the mid '90s, and that just didn't help. Didn't do any good. Didn't change anything. But yeah, I mean, like you were just saying, you've had a few of the films have been released unrated anyway, as far as Hellraiser.
There was a couple of things they wouldn't let me put in the movie. I had a scene with two guys in pig masks fucking a girl? And they were like, no. I remember it was great to get the note, lose the pig fucking scene. I thought that was hilarious. Like, lose the pig fucking Gary. I was like,
Well, this was for Hellraiser Judgment, yeah.
Yeah.
So you still have that scene, don't you, somewhere? Like if that were to leak online or something,
YouTube would be all over it. But
the thing I'm really excited about is I actually have I have all of the footage of the audit, and I was going to do an elongated version, my version of the audit. Once I direct the next film, I was going to bring all of the drives with me to give to the editor and say, right, while we're doing this movie, let's cut together the Tunnicliffe version of the audit so that fans can see that. Because I have like a really long version of the audit I'd like to show with this footage we didn't include that really pushes it to the limit. So I remember handing a huge like a 5 terabyte drive to the editor and saying, can you dump all of the dailies onto that so I have them? So one day that will happen as well. But I have various pieces of footage. But the infamous pig fucking scene, all it was 2 guys spit roasting Sean, the detective's wife, in a vision that he sees them spit roasting his wife, and she's really into it. And it's one guy at one end and one at the other, and they're both wearing kind of like pig masks.
That sounds
sounds
weird. Yeah. Well, still, yeah. No, I'd love a different versions. Stephen Murphy had like a relevant comment to that. Rating systems are kind of weird now, and other countries break them down into different terms and different ratings.
Our rating systems are broke here anyway.
I would say so. It's like so funny when you have like movies that are given like an R rating in the States and they come here and they're like released for say PG-11, which very often happens.
Basically, anything that has to do with language or sex will get you an automatic R now, as opposed to where it used to not be that way. And the opposite is true now. Like back in the day, PG-13 was, you could get away with a set of tits and a few F words, but God forbid you showed any blood. But now it's the opposite. Like you can show 20 people getting blown away on screen and no problem get a PG-13 rating. And it's weird how that works out, but it's like the violence factors, like Gary was saying a bit ago, like, the things you can get away with today are much different in comparison. But
yeah,
I mean, basically, the version of Hellraiser that's out there, isn't that the full uncut version? Was it ever cut anywhere else outside of the, the
you mean the original movie now?
Yeah, the original. Yeah.
I think there are like some snippets that are there, but
which one? Sorry, I missed that.
I'm wondering if that's I'm wondering if that was what his original initial question meant. Was if he was talking about the original movie, because I was curious if it was ever released uncut anywhere else.
I think he meant if there will be made an X-rated one, and of course, since the X rating doesn't exist, I think that Gary was completely right. It's a matter of what will the producers allow, as you said. Like the pig scene, now lose that, and that's like a producer call. But had they not made that call, you could have put it out there. Like that movie was never going to be shown to the MPAA. It was always going to be released unrated. So can in principle put anything in there if they wanted to, couldn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We talked about that on a couple of years ago when we're doing some of the kind of Dimension Extreme movies. Someone was saying, "Oh, we're about ratings." I was like, "You guys don't even care about ratings anymore. You release them as these unrated versions." That was what was annoying for me when they did a trailer for Hellraiser Judgment. They were like, "This is the red band trailer," and it was exactly the same. They hadn't changed anything in it, and it was like, I could make a really hard version for you if you like. But I think the thing about gratuitous, blood and death and violence is it's whilst I've done some pretty gratuitous stuff, I do think violence for the sake of titillation is crazy. It needs to have meaning and resonance and actually have a reason for it. You know what I mean? Otherwise, it just becomes like looking in a butcher's shop window, for God's sake. I used to say this about horror films. I was like, if you want just gratuitous gore, you could take a camera tomorrow and go down to a slaughterhouse and watch animals being cut up, and it would be offensive and horrifying and disgusting. And if that's what you really get your jollies off, then fine. But I mean, I always wanted to do stuff that was avant-garde and weird and strange, and always, I think even Clive, when he did the Hellraiser movie, he was trying to show gratuitous gore in a kind of slightly beautiful way and make it kind of odd and intoxicating to watch, you know. So
well, it's even like your film Judgment. It's like I brought it up to you before, and I still agree. Like, I think that the auditor works as a character almost on his own, and he should have almost his own series. Like, just that idea of that whole, I know, like, just it just that in and of itself works. You don't need the rest. I mean, it's great that it's there and it works with it, but just the idea of the auditor is great.
If you could make a whole film of it, it would become too much of it. Again, this is always the problem with these characters, is that, you know, something like Hellraiser, you know, people always say that Judgment, oh, Pinhead's barely in it. It's like, Pinhead's barely in the first Hellraiser. He's in it for 6 minutes, for God's sake. But, you know, you've got to leave the audience wanting more. There's got to be a balance of these things. Otherwise, it just becomes...
That's why you have your main character to follow through. But yeah, like, I get what you're saying too. Like, I don't see why, my point is, I don't see why the auditor couldn't be any different than, you know, Pinhead or Michael Myers or anybody else for that matter.
Oh, I agree perfectly. I absolutely agree. Not that I'm biased in any way.
No, and I'm not even trying to, like, you know, like, build up your self-esteem or even just to be blunt, suck your dick or anything like that. No, like, the idea of the character was great, and I felt like that transcended the entire, you know, Hellraiser franchise at that point. It was because, you know, like, you know, we've gotten to that point where we're so deep in sequels, like, nobody can even really tell you how many sequels they've had if you got to stop and think about it at that point, you know. So, like, I mean, to me, like, that original of an idea that far into the program really shows, like,
well, I know we're not here to talk about, you know,
imagination,
but really that character was, to me, born out of necessity, because I knew that every time we kept having Pinhead come back and talk, it reduces his character, and I'd always seen him as being, if he's going to turn up and be, you know, Pinhead needs to turn up and be Pinhead and do terrible things, whereas I needed a voice, and most of the Cenobites don't speak. So it was important to have another interesting, weird, you know, character that the audience could look at and be intrigued by, you know. And I've always found horrific characters that speak and have something interesting to say kind of beguiling anyway. Like, you know, Michael Myers and you know, Leatherface, they don't speak, and they're kind of just like these, you know, and Jason as well. They're interesting, but they kind of show up and they tilt their head a bit funny, and then they kind of kill. So
it would even work well as like a TV series, because like each episode you'd have a different subject, and, you know, one subject obviously would be an innocent and one would not, you know, and the whole, like, you set it up like a trial almost every episode. I think it'd be great. Like, you go through flashbacks to tell their side of the story, and then of course, you know, the auditor tells the real events, but yeah.
That was really the original concept of the film. Yeah. The concept was really that the original concept of Hellraiser Judgment, or, you know, it became Hellraiser Judgment and then became Judgment. But the idea was that you have someone go to the house and they get taken and audited by the auditor, but then a cop turns up and he gets audited. And really all it is it's the whole movie then for the next 60 minutes is the cop and the auditor having this kind of back and forth, and you don't know whether the cop is guilty or innocent until the very, very end.
And that's what I liked about it.
Turn up and kind of lay down judgment, you know.
See, and you can do that again and again, and it still feel fresh every time because you have a different subject. But anyway, we're getting way off base here.
I had a scene written earlier on where there's a bang at the door, and the auditor opens the door, and there's two children there, and they say, "We've kicked our ball into your yard. Can we come and get it?" And the auditor is like, "Yes, come inside and get your ball." You know, and then the next day, that, you know, someone comes to the house and there's the ball's deflated on the side. You know, so yeah, it's like anyone can get judged. You know? But we digress. We should talk about.
Yeah, I'm just gonna deal with one super chat that's a super chat that's pertaining to Cleopatra, and then we can move on to the next thing.
Catch up. I think we only had a couple left.
Yeah, we are mostly caught up, but let's see. I'm just gonna refresh just to play it safe to make sure I don't miss anything, because that would really suck. Pudding Tang 2 sent us $5 and said, "I think the Cleopatra film we need is Cleopatra Schwartz from the Kentucky Fried Movie clip, finally brought to the big screen."
That's awesome.
Sure.
You're showing your age there, Pudding Tang. You really are, by referencing the Kentucky Fried Movie. Jeez.
Well, that'll actually kind of come in, a reference come back later when we get into John Landis, because I don't think he has anything to do with Coming to America, but he did with the original anyway.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, and Willie Woodard, he sent me a $1 tip for pronouncing the name of someone else that sent the super chat. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. I
Very
think,
good.
and Robert Levito also sent us $2 thumbs up. So thanks for that. And with that, we're caught up. So we've spoken about the Cleopatra. Now let's talk a little bit about soul, which is something that has many meanings. And one double entendre, to me at least, is that Disney's Soul is no longer in theaters, or will not be released in theaters. Now, Soul, of course, that refers, in this case, primarily to the animated movie that was supposed to be in theaters this Christmas. No longer is. It's going to be a Disney Plus exclusive instead. But this is like the new trend from Disney that Bob Chapek has said, that the theatrical experience is much, much less important going forward. They're all in on Disney Plus. And now it's funny, we had a guest here like about a week and a half ago, someone who said this very thing, that this was going to happen more. Who was the prophet that said that were basically told of things to come? Was it Gary? Yeah, I believe it was Gary. How does it feel to be vindicated?
I'm just glad that that Disney decided to give everyone, their viewership a present, as I suggested they should, after the debacle of Mulan, where they tried to money-grubbingly get $29.99 off you. I think they've done the right thing in basically giving everyone this gift of Christmas Day, and I think
they'll do the same thing with this one.
What? No, Soul's free. Soul is free to Disney subscribers. There's no charge. It's coming out on Christmas Day, and if you've got Disney Plus, you will get it. So it will turn a lot of people to subscribe to Soul, and I think that's a very wise move. Obviously, the movie was supposed to come out this summer, and it didn't. And what's very interesting is obviously the reviews are out. It's 100% tomatoes score. The reviews are amazing. They're saying it's literally a cross between kind of Coco and Inside Me, and everyone's basically saying that Pete Doctor's knocked it out of the park, and that it's a lovely, lovely film and a great Christmas movie. I mean, I was worried that it seemed a bit dark, at first, and a bit heady, but all the reviews are stellar. And look, I think look. The cinemas are up in arms about this because they're saying we're being betrayed by Disney and we're being let down. It's like, hang on a second, Disney don't owe you anything. They're not in the cinema business. It's like Blockbuster saying no one's helping us. It's like, no one helped Blockbuster Video, for Christ's sake. It was deemed to be a technology they were moving a lot away from, and this is the result, I'm afraid. I'm sorry if you've got shares in a cinema company. I'm sorry, AMC, but like I said before, cinema is going to become, in my opinion, one of two things. It's going to be a $100 ticket for a great night out, or it's going to be a super cheap, $2 experience. And ironically enough, going back 7 years, I think Steven Spielberg and George Lucas said the same thing about cinemas, that they were going to become this high-end experience. And there are people out there who are saying, oh, you should, movies like this need to be seen in a cinema, and you can't appreciate this great animation on a 70-inch TV screen. It's like, that's horseshit. You can appreciate a movie, 9-year-olds or 12-year-olds or 15-year-olds don't sit and watch, up and go, this will be much better on a 70 millimeter wide print, in IMAX. It's like it's your eye adopts to the format on which it's being shown to you, and unfortunately, it's going to go away, I think, and. I feel bad for the cinemas, and I wouldn't want to have shares in AMC. I wouldn't. I mean, what's the rumor right now that AMC, by the end of the year, will run out of money officially? They'll be in dire straits, and I understand that. Isn't there a petition by Hollywood directors to bail out? They want the government to bail out AMC. You had it good for a while. I'm afraid. Chapek even said, we planned on rolling this out. Really focusing on our streaming system over the next few years, but coronavirus has caused that to be done quicker. And I'm sorry, and you can say, Disney are pandering to their investors and looking after them. I'm sorry, folks, it's a business. It's a business. I mean, you have to take care of your investors. I mean, you can't just say, oh well, we're going to stick this in theaters and lose shitloads of money on our investment. I mean, So, I mean, they're definitely sugarcoating it by saying, you know, we're Chapek saying we're seeing ourselves as we want to basically put the audience member first, and we want to cater to our audience so they can see whatever platform we do, and we're not giving up on cinemas. Of course, certain movies will go there, but unfortunately, the reality is this is the way of the future, and it'll be interesting to hear on December the 10th just how well they are doing. I mean, he states that they've exceeded all of their projections and their hopes and desires in what Disney Plus would do. But on December the 10th, I think there's a Disney investor kind of con, and we'll get to find out what the numbers are exactly. But at the end of the day, people are going to get to see this great Pixar movie on Christmas Day, you know, and all you've got to do is sign up to Disney Plus.
Yeah, I would certainly be very excited for that one myself, and I'm they better hope that Disney Plus is blowing up all kinds of records, because that's the only part of their business making money right about now. Everything else is a massive drain on them. So,
we're really getting into the streaming wars. It's going to get really, really gnarly over the next 6 or 7 years. It's going to get crazy. And there are some people with some big pockets out there, and the people who are going to get kicked to the curb are AMC and Regal and all that. I'm sorry, but they've got no skin in the game. If Disney owned, you know, the theater companies, they'd have a different take on it, but they don't. I'm sure they're like, hey, we don't have a theater company. What's our agenda for putting these movies into theaters?
Well, here's the thing: is right now, you're looking at it in that respect, because of the pandemic. But if there wasn't a pandemic right now, they need the theaters. Mulan proved that. I mean, Bill and Ted was the only movie that's really made any real money on digital besides Trolls, and Trolls lost how much money in, you know, video and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's still a thing where they can't make the kind of money, even like some of the bigger things that have done anything on digital stream, because in U.S. the infrastructure is not built for that, and people don't trust digital.
You're splitting every dollar. You're 50-50ing every dollar with the cinemas.
Yeah, but here's the thing: like the only reason they need the theaters right now is because the movies currently in production and about to be released are scaled with that in mind.
Yeah,
if they for the next round of movies scale them for streaming, that problem is solved.
And they have to. They're gonna have to. Even when theaters do open.
Let me suggest this. Okay, so this is evil, I'm afraid, but okay. So guys, we make movies, right? And we put movies out in cinemas, and we put them out on streaming. Right now, the streaming isn't making enough money because people are still going to the cinemas, right, to see these movies. So we kill the cinemas. Then you have nowhere else to see it but on streaming. So we kill the cinemas. We don't let them have our movies, and we bleed them dry until they have nothing left and they are dead. And then the only way you can see a movie is on streaming.
That would be very profitable for Disney Plus and HBO Max.
That is until everything's on the Pirate Bay, but yeah.
I'm just saying, don't imagine that someone sitting there in a dark room somewhere has gone, so we kill the cinemas, guys. Let's kill them. Yeah. Well, how do we kill them? We starve them out. We don't give them anything. They can't have anything. And then we don't have to worry about them anymore because they don't exist. You know, Jesus, Frank, that's awful. You're suggesting killing an industry so that benefits ours? Yeah. yes, I am. You know, and whilst we lose in the interim, eventually people will have no choice but to watch a movie here. We take away the other option and we move them here. It's awful. It's an awful concept. It's an awful idea. And probably I'm completely wrong, but...
No, probably you're completely right, because I absolutely see the logic behind it. And yeah, of course, many people are going to be taking to the high seas. But if you make it simple enough, there's like loads of people that don't know how to surf shark it. So
there's loads of people who don't know how to stream it. Period. Though that's the problem.
Yeah, I know, but I think that's something that will be overcome with the upcoming generation. Yeah, people over 40 may not know it, but give it like 10 years and a change in generation, and everyone will know how to stream.
But do you not think as well, Tom, that something like Soul could be the thing that tips the balance, in that you get people like me, for instance. I go, Jesus, guys, I've got Netflix, I got so-and-so. Do I really want to? I don't want to spend another streaming service, you know? And so here's your interest level. It's like, here's the top, here's the bottom. You're like, My interest level in going to Disney, oh no. Okay, I hear Mandalorian's really good. Like, I'm kind of curious about this Mandalorian show. Okay, now they're gonna have Soul for free. Okay, I'm on the edge. How much is it again? Oh, I can afford another $9.99 a month. Yeah, if I can do it.
Well, here's my thing with Soul, and this is why I have a feeling they may be pushing it to the Disney Plus more so than anything. I want everybody out there in the chat, if you've heard of Soul before we talked about it or before you heard it was getting pushed to Disney Plus, push 1. If you hadn't heard about it until this happened, push 2. I didn't hear about this movie until it got pushed. I didn't even know what it was. And it's the first time ever for a Pixar movie. I was like, okay, this took me completely by surprise. I never even heard of it.
So yeah, everyone, let us know if you had heard about Soul to begin with. As for me, I've seen the poster, never seen the trailer. I know it's
getting
Pixar,
kind of a
that
mix so far.
That has me sold. But in the meantime, while you vote, we got another super chat, which is very topical. Daniel Hall sent us $5 asking, with the movies going to streaming, does that end the back-end point system for the actors, directors, and producers? All cash up front from now on?
No.
Gary, your thoughts?
No, not at all. No, eventually the SAG and all those guys will weigh in and they'll say, I mean, I get residuals from stuff that goes to streaming. I think it will just mean that numbers will have to be more transparent via the streaming agencies and stuff like that. But no, I mean, residuals and points will still be out there. I think they'll just have to, I think what will happen is the unions will step up and really kind of start to rattle their saber to make sure that there's a transparency on the numbers to protect people like that. So,
yeah.
Again, what we're looking at is we're in the midst of change. So there'll be a learning curve and a change. And look, I mean, even now, I get checks even now from things that I did years ago, where money from international sales in countries that I never knew about, that SAG or the Writers Guild have been trying to find me and say, we've got like 5 years of international sales on The Guardian that you wrote, and we owe you for Thailand and India and stuff like that. And I'm like, really? And they're like, yeah, we've got a check here for like $800. And you're like, that's crazy, So that's what these agencies do, the guilds, and even ones that you're not a member of, they will, they have departments who are set up purely to go and chase down. That's the one real benefit of being in SAG and the Writers Guild and the Directors Guild, is that that's what they do. That's their thing.
Yeah,
but yeah, our vote was pretty split actually, so I was kind of surprised.
It surprised me because they've been very smart. They haven't done their big push. That
is true, and that needs to be taken into account. But like usually, I know, and most people know about Pixar movies well in advance because they don't generally make them a secret.
They just drop their trailers. Their trailers are dropping now. I would expect you're going to hear about it. It's going to be. I suspect a week from now, Tom, you're going to be like, "Geez, Soul, man."
Very possible. Very possible. I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong, but like I was just curious to see because like I remember, knowing about Dinosaur, Brave, all of them, Toy Story 4, all these movies 2-3 years before they ever came out. This is the first time I ever heard about this one.
Yes, for me, I knew, but by contrast, me though, I've never known about them until they are out and people start talking about them. So it could be like what you're seeking out also. But yeah, one more super chat before. Yeah,
if you watch the trailer, Tom, it's really funny because the trailer, basically the lead character in Soul is he's a jazz musician and a teacher. So he's kind of like, he's almost, he's got like a little teaching class at the beginning, and he kind of like ends up, no spoiler in the trailer, he dies and kind of his soul gets taken and he has to find his way back. But I just love the beginning because it reminds me of Fletcher's character, the J.K. Simmons character in Whiplash. And I was just thinking, wow, if it had been him going and losing his life, he'd have gone straight to hell. So I always think it's funny. There's this kind of like, New York Conservatory kind of music teacher, kind of jazz musician thing. And I'm thinking, oh, yeah, it's like the guy from Whiplash, only he's the nice guy, not the evil bastard that J.K. Simmons plays. So if you see it, you'll know what I mean.
Yeah, that's a brilliant movie. Absolutely brilliant movie. Love it. Yeah. So if you haven't seen Whiplash, do yourself a favor and go see it. And definitely see Rome. I cannot recommend that highly enough.
Rome, amazing TV series. Amazing. And saucy. I mean, they didn't hold back. I mean, woohoo.
That's how you do it. I mean, that series was Game of Thrones before Game of Thrones was Game of Thrones. Yeah. And unlike Game of Thrones, it never stopped being Game of Thrones.
No,
so, So yeah, one more super chat before we transition into the final topic. Adam Wofford sent us $5 saying that what with the Pony Express when the telegraph wire came out, you just had to learn to code to revise letters from family across the nation.
Wow, Adam, you're showing your age now. We have a 112-year-old viewer watching right now. That's amazing. That's quite insane.
Not
How old are
bad
you,
at
Adam?
all. Not bad at all. Yeah, but on the topic of streaming, because we recently learned that Soul isn't the only one that will be going straight to streaming. There is also a movie that I know Tom was looking greatly forward to, namely Coming to America Part 2.
Coming to America.
Yeah, Coming to America. Sorry then.
Are you a fan of sexual chocolate, Tom?
Sexual chocolate.
They play so fine, I think you'll agree.
I believe the children are our future. Thank you. Teacher,
they're both good.
Let them lead the way.
You're crazy.
You ain't meant no Martin Luther King. No, I love the first Coming to America.
Fuck you.
Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. Who next?
Cuba Gooding Jr., that's who.
What was that?
Cuba Gooding Jr., that's his name.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
Sorry. Stand him out of the way.
No. I was really looking forward to this, and then I heard they're aiming for a PG-13, and I'm like, oh. And then there was kind of rumblings going around because even Robert Meyer Burnett had hinted that he felt like it was going to go to Netflix or at least some streaming service, and lo and behold, that's what happened here. But I mean, this makes sense for Paramount because I don't know what the budget is, but they sold it for $125 million to Hulu or Amazon. I almost said Hulu. And they probably made a pretty good profit on it.
Definitely. Not like an amazing, but here's the important thing, that by doing this, they reduced risk. They controlled their risk because releasing it in this atmosphere is a gamble. Paramount Plus isn't up yet. They haven't really got like a
they made a
theatrical
shit ton on it
distribution right now. So then they could either sell it and take what they could get for it, or hold it and risk suddenly the down payment or the interest levels for investors being increased and stuff like that. So this was the perfect solution for everyone involved, I think.
I am a huge fan of Coming to America. I love it. Not only as a makeup effects artist who loves Rick Baker's brilliant makeups on Eddie Murphy, but I love the comedy of it. I've always loved it. I mean, everything from Bark Like a Dog, to, Sexy Chocolate, to all of it. Eric LaSalle, the Soul Glow, McDowell's. Love that movie. Love it. Love seeing Samuel Jackson get his ass kicked in that movie. Like there's a bit part. Just so much in that movie I love and adore. And then when I heard that it was being picked up by Amazon, I would suggest that a film that probably cost $60 or $80 million, I would suggest that it was screened at Paramount and a bunch of people sat in a room, watched it and went, it's not very good, is it? It's really, what happened there? Like, it's okay. We should try and sell this, and they sold it. I'm going to roll the dice and say, unfortunately, I bet we're going to watch it and go, it was okay. But it wasn't the original, which is a real shame because I was desperately hoping it would be utterly fantastic. But maybe the time has passed. Maybe the jokes don't fly. I don't know. But I'm gonna put it out there right now that when we see it, we're gonna go, it was okay. So Paramount saw it, looked at it, analyzed it, and said, this isn't going to be a $300 million making movie, even cinemas or streaming. So if we can sell it, fantastic. Let's sell it to Amazon, and $125 million with no risk. It's making money. You're in the black.
Right. I mean, that's probably the reason. I got half a mind to think that. I can't find a specific budget, but I think you're right. It probably costs somewhere between 60 and 80. Yeah. And that's probably even.
It's not a done deal even then. I think Eddie Murphy as a producer has to sign off on it. And I
think he did. I think that was the whole thing we were waiting for, but I think he finally did. But yeah, you could be right. The other side of it could be more so that they looked at it as, theaters aren't going to be open. This is a sequel to a 25-year movie.
I just think it's not going to be. I just think we're going to watch it and go.
You could be right. I hope not, but
Trust me. I love Eddie Murphy. I mean, I'm really hoping that Eddie does a stand-up special. I think he'll be brilliant. I thought Dolomite was really fun, but I didn't think Dolomite was amazing. I thought it was okay. I bought Bill and Ted. Based on the reviews that I saw of people going, oh, it's so great, and I watched it and thought it was a very cheap film and it wasn't that funny. I was like, it was okay, but I own it and I haven't watched it again since. I watched it once, so I was let down. I loved the first one and I really enjoyed Bogus Journey, which felt like a big movie, but this felt very green screeny and very cheap. Some great makeup effects in it, but that doesn't hold the film together. But it just didn't feel that funny to me. And I think they put it out and made some money off it. So I've got a horrible feeling that Coming to America is going to be just an okay movie. But I think we have to realize that Amazon are going to step into the play here. I mean, Prime Day, they just had Prime Day for Amazon. The estimation of sales for Prime Day alone this year is $10 billion.
Well, yeah, because nobody wants to go out and shop.
$10 billion. They are becoming a monster. So they will become a player. They will start buying up properties and getting it out there. Coming to America, I mean, a trailer hasn't dropped yet, right? But I mean,
no.
I just saw the trailer for the Borat movie. Now, Borat was a movie that I really thought was brilliant. I thought it was okay, and it caught the imagination of the public. But I'm curious to know what you guys. I saw the trailer for Borat and just went, this isn't funny anymore. You know, it isn't funny. It had its moment. It's passed, and now it just feels like a bad Borat impression, and like we've moved on as a society.
I will tell you exactly what I think about Borat. There's a part of it that excites me. But Tom, let's hear from you first. How excited are you for Borat?
I mean, I liked the first film. Out of all of his characters so far, Borat's probably one of my favorites. But I mean, there's aspects of the new trailer I thought were kind of funny, but I get where Gary's coming from. It's like, yeah, it's kind of past its prime. And I mean, he even points out in the trailer that he's got to go around in incognito because everybody recognizes him. Well, doesn't that kind of defeat the whole purpose of doing it in the first place?
Right.
If you got to be a bunch of different characters besides Borat, I mean,
yeah, that's why he retired Borat to begin with, because he retired his character after like the movies because then they're too recognizable.
I'm sure those movies aren't expensive to make, so I'm sure it's money in the bank. I just remember watching the trailer thinking, this just feels like it was of its time. It'd be like if Michael Myers turned up tomorrow going, yeah, baby, you know, here I am, Austin Powers. I'll be a bit like, haven't we moved on?
Don't count that out.
Oh, no, absolutely.
No, but I mean, I get you. That's the point exactly, Gary, is this movie cost $1.05 to make. That's why he made a killing off selling it to Amazon, I bet. And again, like it could be, I'm fingers crossed this movie is decent, and Paramount just looked at it as, this is too good to pass up, because we can't guarantee, even if the movie gets good word of mouth with this kind of a situation right now.
Well, I mean,
whether it's through streaming or in theaters,
Paramount did Chicago 7 and Lovebirds as well. Again, maybe they're just selling off movies. Maybe they need all that bank to make Cleopatra, right? To give.
There's that too. Well, there's that too. Like I brought up to Andres, because they made the deal with Netflix for Beverly Hills Cop 4 and 5. They have specifically said they don't plan on stopping making content for other streaming services and other television channels and whatnot, because that's their bread and butter, and that's how they plan on funding all these 52 movies a year kind of thing. So again, and like bringing up Bill and Ted, I loved the film, but I didn't think, I agree with you that the budget, it could have needed, could have used a little bit better effects, and it could have afforded another $10 million added onto the budget and still made money. But at this point, I think that's where we're at with this movie, is like, if they can do it, if it was done at a budget that was like, okay, we can make this now with $125 million coming from Amazon, as opposed to take the chance to put it in theaters or even streaming like Bill and Ted. Maybe that was the problem, is it cost $20-30 million more than Bill and Ted made, and they saw how much Bill and Ted made, and they're like, no, there's no way we can make our money back, and they made this deal, because this is like 2 or 3 weeks after the dust is settled on Bill and Ted. So,
but again, Tom, this takes me back to the point I had last week, is that I truly believe that consumers and me and you and everyone, we have our thing of like, do I go and see, do I stream it, or do I spend the money on going and seeing it at a cinema? Now, Borat is a movie that you go, I don't need to go to a cinema to see that. You know,
Exactly.
You know
That's a great point.
No
too.
benefit of seeing it in a
Absolutely,
cinema.
absolutely. And the thing is more people have Amazon Prime than we think. Like most people forget about that when they think of the streaming services because they bring up Netflix and all the other ones, but most people forget, oh yeah, Amazon Prime. You know, it's just there because everybody kind of has it. It's almost like a second thought, kind of like HBO was for a while. I have to keep reminding people when they bring up all the streaming services, like you forgot HBO in there because HBO, whether you count HBO Max in it or not, they had almost as many subscribers as Netflix going into this. So like the streaming wars are alive and happening, and that's something we've talked about for a while, but we got to get rounded up here because I know Andre's got to get rolling. But
absolutely, I just want to say my views on Borat first. I saw the trailer and I love the beginning of it. I love the sequences of him in Kazakhstan. And then I lose interest the moment that he goes to America. Now, part of the reason why I look forward to that is because I don't know if this has happened, but it looks like they've gone back to the same Romanian gypsy village where they filmed the first movie, or filmed parts of the first movie, to refilm scenes here where they get to beat him up and stuff like that. And that would be hilarious. Because the people in that village, the gypsy village, they were so pissed off at Sacha Baron Cohen. There's even a documentary that you can find on YouTube. I recommend watching it. It's called "When Borat Came to Town," where basically there's like a lawyer that comes and grifts them, trying to sue Borat or sue Sacha Baron Cohen. That doesn't help. But basically, it's like a camera crew that goes and follows them around.
Right.
Shows them life in the village and how insulted they were when the guy was like, no, Borat, they said that they were filming a documentary about how shitty we gypsies have it, and we did exactly what they said, and then they make this movie and they portray him as a rapist and me as a gynecologist and like an abortion clinic, and no, I'm not that, so like I'm just a carpenter or something like that. And it's actually a really, really fascinating documentary. And look, they got nothing. But if he then came back and told them, you know what, I'm going to pay you more money this time around, and you get to share your feelings by beating me up, that would be freaking hilarious.
I'm sure with some beer and some money and new TVs for everybody, and they're all like, yeah, you can come back and do whatever you like. So
yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Very easy
So I hope that he went to the exact same village. It would be hilarious if we see like some of those people on screen again. So, and also that's like funny because like the people, they were angry that they were being portrayed as like so backwards and primitive. And then when you see like this documentary that follows them around in their daily lives, they're really a bunch of Borats, a lot of them. So it was pretty hilarious. Like the is that he wants to like make a parody not of people like Borat, but of those who think that a character like Borat can exist, but they evidently do in that village in Klut, I think it is. That actually shouldn't be too far from you, Gary.
No, I'm asking my wife where it is. It's in the north somewhere, so it's not in Bucharest, but it's north somewhere.
Yeah.
He went to a couple of villages like that, and trust me, I'm sure that if you turned it with some money and bought them all a drink and threw them some money, they'd all be like, "Yay, this is great!" So
yeah.
Sabina from Uruguay wants to know what documentary you're talking about. Weren't that just something you were making up?
No, I'm not making it up. Seriously, it's on YouTube. I think it's called "When Borat Came to Town."
I've never seen that. Then
make it your business to do so. It's actually really cool.
Yeah.
And watch that, and then re-watch the Borat 2 trailer, and you'll have a completely different view on like the scenes back in Romania with him being beaten up and stuff. I think that must be part of the reason why they had that there. So that part of the trailer had me interested. Well, and I have a couple of super chats to go through. Let's see. We got a couple from Adam Wofford, who started up with the Pony Express that we referenced, and then he followed up with, "I have heard for Soul, but it was about a year ago the last time I was in a theater. But I thought it already came out shortly afterwards, which evidently it didn't.
I thought
And,
I was scared Adam was going to say, I remember when they shot Lincoln, it was really bad that night.
that actually goes back to his
Worst
next
experience
super chat,
in the theater ever.
where he gives his age.
It was so noisy. I was trying to watch the show and someone got shot.
Oh, maybe he was there because he says that he was 4,200. He's been around for a while.
He's been lots of different places.
That's right. He's a Highlander. He's come down through the ages.
He was old when Cleopatra was young.
Now there's a movie that should be remade. Highlander. Make that with the great.
Well, they have tried, and that's one that I haven't been totally against either, because it's like, you know, outside of the first film, they've kind of mucked it all up anyway. So, I mean, the third film's okay, but
any other super chats?
No, I believe we are caught up.
There you go.
So with that, as always, I would like to say thank you to Gary for joining us today. It's always a pleasure. You're welcome anytime. And we were always happy to have you on. And David Rayner wants a Ringworld movie. So do I. I actually want Ringworld more than I do Discworld.
Sounds like a terrible porn movie to me. That does.
That'd be Cock Ringworld, but yeah.
And on that note, also thanks to everyone in the chat that has been watching. We really appreciate that. Gary, where can people find you?
Oh God, the end of their road. No, Instagram, Bollywood Assassin. If you're vaguely interested, or that's about it really. Or here, just watch Midnight's Edge, and I might pop up. You never know.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think we got you scheduled for next Friday as well.
There you go, then. Yes, yeah. Let's talk about Dune. I want to talk about Dune. I want to tell you why I think it's going to be a flop.
We look forward to hearing that next Friday. And also on that note, everyone, please hit like and help share the video, because YouTube has this thing where they don't always recommend the streams as much as they usually do. And the best way to overcome that is if you like what we do and would like to see it grow, then please help share. That's the best thing that you can do to help us overcome an algorithm that doesn't always favor independent creators such as ourselves.
That's right. And we want to thank the ones who did find their way here today, because I believe we were being ghosted. So, yeah. All right, folks. In Monday, we will have Michael from Retro Blasting on as well, so tune in for that. And until then, Andre, was there anything else you wanted to add before we go?
We may have a MODOK video coming for you over the course of the weekend, so check back for that.
No, we'll hopefully we'll have that. So, yeah, until then, take care, everybody, and have a great day.
Stay safe, everyone.